Are you seeing the query?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. So we have 7 up. And would anyone like to read it?
I'll read it.
Thank you.
Question 7. How may the soul be helped against him? Him meaning the strong man armed. Answer. Receiving the truth in the love and giving up the heart in the virtue that flows from Christ in his visits and appearances, brings in that strength into the soul which conquers him. He is not able to stand before the power of Christ, which power is the soul's, as it is let in by the soul. It is the unbelief of the heart and the earthly thoughts and imaginations which give the enemy strength. But before the faith, even in the weakest, he is weak and his strength falls.
I don't see much to comment on in this question and answer, but I just want to remark how sweet it is and how true to my experience. I don't believe I want any of the devil's temptations. I mean, I suppose if something were waved under my nose and a bunch of loved ones lobbied me strongly to go take a drink, have accept the amorous interests of a potential fourth wife, or something like my imagination could be drawn away, but no. Anyway, all my potential lobbyists know that I'm not going to be tempted. And I'm not easily tempted by fear, like, oh, you have to go out and vote in order to change the political climate. No. I'm clear I am not to vote. So I just want to serve Christ in a way that I feel empowered to serve him, or if he asks me to serve him in some way that I don't feel prepared for, like to go on a public speaking tour, I'll say, well, Lord, you'll just have to give me a voice to do it with. But experience has taught me that what he commands, he empowers.
I find it helpful. Am I not muted? Yeah, okay. I find it helpful when reading these words to do a quick survey within myself to find the feelings that pertain to what is being said in order to understand them, understand what's being said. And looking at that first phrase, receiving the truth in the love. Inwardly, I experience receiving the truth as the openness that we have talked about a number of times in these discussions, that one has to be really open in order to receive the truth, because it's human nature to want to color the truth in a way that is favorable to the ego, and to not allow any truth to enter our understanding that challenges the ego. So to receive the truth, one must have that complete openness to whatever may be given and said to us about ourselves. And the rest of that, in the love, receiving the truth in the love, I think the love is also something that we have spoken about here. When we have that confidence that Christ is appearing and visiting us, and it will be of benefit to us. We have that love for him because he presents us with such goodness that that we feel that love for the truth and can receive it willingly. So that the heart is given up without any resistance to the truth. And the virtue that flows from Christ in his visits and appearances brings in that strength into the soul which conquers him. And when that process is complete, where we've been open and received that that truth, and we're feeling love and we're feeling strengthened, the experience is that whatever temptation or something that isn't quite right is simply evaporates. It's no longer there. And I think that affirms the fact that he goes on to say that the enemy's strength falls when this process of courageous openness to whatever is to be said to us. And a deep love and hope and expectation that it will be of benefit regardless of what it is. That is what reduces that resistance of the strong man armed.
One of the things that struck me was about the earthly thoughts and imaginations, and I sort of always am brought to see those as fear, that the fears that we have, things we imagine or things that actually are frightening to us, if we let those overtake our soul, the enemy will take advantage of that weakness. And it brought to mind a saying that I grew up with. It was a little saying on the refrigerator. Fear knocked, faith answered, no one was there. And I always was struck by that if we answer fear with faith, then in this case, the strong man will be gone.
Yeah, I'm very much on the same page with what Pat said. For me, that message is coming through the idea of being as a little child. I sort of see myself with my childlike face turned up towards this big man, this big loving man who's clearly wants only the best for me. And he's giving me instruction, and it's so easy in that state to accept it. And as a child, there aren't that many earthly thoughts and imaginations. There can be fear for sure. I was terrified of thunder and lightning when I was a child, but such simple fears, right? And so even as a child who is weak, who doesn't have a lot of moral power, physical power, intellectual power yet, it doesn't matter because I'm going to be taken care of.
I think that maybe what I'd like to do is look at that passage in the gospel. I have it in Mark, of where Jesus talks about the strong man. Why I'd like to do that is just that I feel like it might give us some different perspective on why Penington is choosing that particular image. May not, but might be worth looking at.
Please.
Everybody wants to do that?
Yes.
I'm looking. Yes, what?
I would like to.
Okay.
Do you have the chapter and verse?
Yes, I do. It's chapter 3 in Mark. It may be in the other synoptics too. I'm not sure. Probably is. The situation is that the scribes have come down from Jerusalem and they're accusing Jesus of having Beelzebub and saying that by the prince of devils, he casts out the devils. So probably Jesus has healed someone recently. And this is the way his opponents are describing, explaining how he can do that. He casts out devils by the prince of devils, they say. And so it goes on in verse 23. And he called them unto him and said unto them in parables, how can Satan cast out Satan? If a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And if Satan rise up against himself and be divided, he cannot stand, but hath an end. No man can enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except he will first bind the strong man, and then he will spoil his house. Verily, I say unto you, all sins shall be forgiven unto the sons of men, and blasphemies wherewith soever they shall blaspheme. But he that shall blaspheme against the Holy Ghost hath never forgiveness, but is in danger of eternal damnation. Because, they said, he hath an unclean spirit. Well, it's to me, I go back to the question 6 and the answer to that. The strong man armed, whom he cometh to dispossess, who doth what he can to blind the eye from seeing the lovely nature of Christ and to harden the heart against his visits and appearances. I think reminds me of what Lisa was just saying a little while ago, that fear can prevent this seeing the lovely nature of Christ, and that fear can harden the heart against these visits and appearances of Christ.
Are there any other thoughts on this passage, this question? Maybe time to move on. Now we're not so much in the catechism style here. Would someone like to read that first paragraph?
I was just thinking, yeah, we should do it in paragraphs, maybe one paragraph at a time.
I can do the first one.
Thank you.
Christ is the minister of the true sanctuary, which God hath pitched, and not man. There is a city whose builder and maker is God. The foundation stone, the cornerstone, the top stone of this city or building is Christ. He therefore that would know Christ and be built upon Christ must find a holy thing revealed in his heart, and his soul built thereon by him, who alone can raise this building, who can rear up the tabernacle that hath long been fallen down, who can build up the old waste places and restore the paths for the ransomed and redeemed of the Lord to walk and travel on in.
I'm interested in how others experience a holy thing revealed in the heart. Seems to be the linchpin in this paragraph.
I find that holy thing hard to visualize except as a glimmering of light that sheds light on the heart as a whole. What I'm resonating with in this paragraph is the language about the tabernacle that has long been fallen down, which makes me think of the remnants of the unfallen Adam, the something that was originally part of the self, myself or yourself, anybody's self, that was forgotten about and abandoned and fell into decay. But with the shining of Christ's light, comes back to health and strength and usability. The waste places become gardens, the paths become something that we can walk on. An original structure becomes usable again. And the implication is this was the original pattern that we were created on. And as George Fox said, we who were made in God's image took on the image and likeness of the serpent. But this is the work of Christ, is to erase that image of the serpent and reawaken us to the image of God that was ours in the beginning. As if we had been sick for millennia or an indefinite stretch of time and are being restored to health, so that we feel instinctively, with a nonverbal kind of knowing, oh yeah, I remember this. This feels right.
Madeline, I had the same idea that is the key sentence here. He, therefore, that would know Christ and be built upon Christ must find a holy thing revealed in his heart. I think of how the Hebrews were educated from how God and his prophet took that people from being slaves to being people who knew God. And how he educated them was he had them make a distinction between what was holy and what wasn't. There would be, a holy day, the Sabbath. There would be holy ways of doing things and ways that weren't holy. There was always distinctions being made between the holy and the mundane. And I think that the reason for that is that our human nature initially doesn't know the holy. We only know the mundane. And we have it's like a different dimension that we can't inhabit, that we don't even know exists. And how to educate us, how to teach us that there's this other level of being is probably the biggest problem that humanity faces, is that we're blind to God. So Penington is saying we must find a holy thing revealed in the heart. And that's the beginning of the rebuilding the waste places, is first to believe that this other way of being is possible, is real. And there's such the deck is really stacked against us because we're so fearful of being hurt or killed or diminished in some way. And that fear just prevents Christ from being seen. So, that education can go on of distinguishing between the holy and the mundane, but it can just become a legalistic system. And it's not a living thing, it's not a living understanding. But I think that, there's this seed of Christ within us that that if it isn't muffled, if it isn't tamped down, will insist that the truth is important, the truth is necessary, the truth is what we must build our lives upon. And I think each of us has that seed within us, and each of us is capable of hearing its demands upon us. And that if we don't stifle that, if we allow ourselves to hear it in spite of our fear of what it may say, then God's mercy reveals that holy thing in our hearts. And then we can start to live and build upon it. And that's a complete change in our understanding of who we are as individuals and as a human race. But where humanity stands initially is completely ignorant of that, won't hear it, It's too threatening. And I think it's the obligation of anyone who has known that holy thing revealed in the heart to make it clear, make it real, make it heard.
Seems to me that the holy thing revealed in the heart is what Fox is talking about when he says to answer that of God in everyone, and that includes ourselves, to recognize that holy thing. And wouldn't it be wonderful if everyone in the world recognized that of God in everyone else? We would be in paradise. It also brought to mind an ancient monastic, the founder of monasticism, Saint Benedict, who in his journey to finding that holy thing had a vision where he saw the entire world in a single ray of light. And that just struck me as being related to this, that once we find that holy thing, then it brings in, it encompasses all of the world. We just have to keep reminding ourselves of it, that it's there. And that's not always an easy thing to do amidst the chaos of everyday life.
Yes, I've been pondering this holy thing revealed in the heart. I'm remembering a few times, even as early as childhood, seeing or hearing something and recognizing a mystery and a glimmer that there was something else possible. I wouldn't have had any idea in childhood what that was. But it was, and there were no words, and I still can't really describe the experience, but it was real and fundamental in my life. And so I think that may reflect this idea of the seed, that is, it just needs a little something to draw it forth, to have it recognized. Then after that, one needs the right conditions for its growth, and that, as has been said, may or may not be possible for an individual.
I find myself wondering, I read this, because I do believe that everyone has this holy thing, and depending on their circumstance or sensitivity, when they're young, as Madeline spoke, that that recognition of that revelation, that there's something, of the holy within that connects to a greater sense without. And and I just look, I just have this picture of so many people with this opportunity, this gift, later on, where they might have, gone down one path or another, and either through indifference or fear. I just see a lot of like passive actions or considerations where people knew and turned from it, and that's where all those buildings fall down. That's where everything crumbles. That's where all that was wholly with foundation was left to rot and ruin. And how many times do people actually turn back and dig around and find that holy thing again, remember their way to that spot? It's I love the idea of the picture of it as light, illuminating every dark corner. When I first read it, I heard it as a tone, and it's almost like that, and when Lisa talked about seeing or answering that of God in others, and I think that's how do we know to connect with others that sort of have a similar sense of God or sense of wonder, and how do we know that we're when we're with two people or two or more, and we sink into that silence, which is becoming worship? How do we all know that same path? And to me, that's that holy place, that holiness, that little seed or that little sound, or tone that just reaches out and connects with others of its kind. And that's part of the restoration of paths, the connection of the roots, for roots like ROUTE, where people walk on, and not necessarily alone. And I appreciate what everyone has shared, because in the first part, it was like there wasn't a word I was going to add that was not going to be repetitive or unhelpful. It was like everything, like yeah, that's all there. But yeah, this is yet another gift of an evening. So thank you, friends.
I'm hesitant to say more because I think my contributions tonight have not been particularly wise or profound. But questioning myself, where did I get the ability to recognize goodness? I remembered a very early memory of my mother catching a fly gently in a piece of Kleenex, opening the window and putting it out. The routine in the house I grew up in was, if there's a fly in the house, swat it. And I just, this made me feel just love from my mother, admiration, awe, wonder. And it was goodness, and I recognized it. And that's the only thing, that's the only thing I can say about it. But I recognized it, and it awoke something in me that made me very early in life decide I want to grow up to be more like my mom than like my dad.
Thank you, John. Well, it looks like we're near the end of our time, so we'll save the next paragraph for next time, which is kind of a long one. Yeah, that'll take us a while. Okay. Good. Well, thank you everyone for being here. And maybe just a couple more minutes of listening. And but I will also stop the recording.